Welcome to Lead Like a Girl, where we are empowering everyday women through our stories. I'm your host, Jessica Smith, and I began this journey by sharing my life story. Now, I've joined forces with my longtime friends, Jamie and Corlin, to keep this party going. We met many years ago as young sales girls in our 20s, driven and quickly rising to the top of our industry. As the years went on, life happened, and we all found ourselves in new companies and completely different industries, still striving for success in it all. Career, family, faith, fun. Now, it wasn't easy, but we never stopped moving. Get ready for our real conversations, inspiring stories, and our big life lessons as we share it all. The good, the bad, and the funny. Welcome to Lead Like a Girl.
Hello all, welcome to another episode of Lead Like a Girl. I want to give you a quick introduction before we hop into our episode. We have got a fantastic guest here today. Her name is Kate Ferrian. She's a speaker. She's an empowerment strategist, an entrepreneur, and she's the founder of an online site called Simply Become It. So Kate empowers women to build confidence and overcoming all of our limiting beliefs. She's got 16 years of corporate expertise and just growing through her own journey of personal transformation through surviving a divorce, an abusive relationship, and she's here to talk to us all about that. Her blend of strategic insight and resilience is absolutely inspiring. I'm so glad you're here. So thanks for tuning in. Let's jump into our next episode of Lead Like a Girl. All right, ladies, welcome to another episode of Lead Like a Girl. I am hosting today. I'm Corlin. I'm here with my two amazing friends, Jamie and Jessica, and we're here today with another plus one. We've got our friend Kate Ferrian here. Welcome everybody to another session here. We're here empowering everyday women through our stories. So we're here with the good, the bad, and the funny. Today's going to be a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. Hopefully a little bit of funny will bring it. I think, so Jamie is in Iowa, Kate's in Minneapolis-ish area, Jessica's a little bit in Atlanta, but I want to say we are experiencing a polar vortex right now. It is frigid here. Would you concur with that, Jamie, Kate?
It is just dumb.
Yes. It's stupid cold.
I went to the beach this weekend, hoping for warm weather and couldn't even get it there. I'm like, what the? Yeah, it's cold everywhere.
So
dumb.
I always like to start off when I'm hosting with a first minute fast question. And so because we're in this polar vortex, I have already gotten an email that school's canceled tomorrow.
What?
So yeah, 100%
not here.
School's canceled. And my first minute fast question for you guys is just, I want to know, what do you do as a woman leader who needs to ramp up and go? What happens when school's canceled? Because we are scrambling right now. I called up my mother-in-law and asked her, so what's going on tomorrow? Would you like to have a 10-year-old boy at your beck and call all day? And of course she says yes, because I have amazing mother-in-laws here to show up. How about you guys?
Well,
what happens?
If you asked me in our DB days, then it would be, well, Mr. Smith, you're going to have to call into work because I got to go to work and my job is more important. And that's the wrong mindset. But that was 10 years ago. Me now today, I'm calling into work. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
I got to stay home and that's just what it is. And I'll do whatever work I can from home. I'm totally okay with doing that today. So
That's
I've
good
come a long
mindset.
way. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. You guys, I can't even, I am a bring my kid to work person.
I think that would be dangerous at the job site.
You just slap a construction hat on there and like, okay, don't get your shoes dirty.
I got a picture of me and Sophia both wearing hard hats, delivering lunch on a construction site. Not even lying about that.
Oh, that's funny.
But, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I've brought every single one of them to work with me. And luckily, I have had hybrid type jobs where I've been able to work from home. And I also have pictures of my children just, like I'll put a blanket out on the floor next to my desk with the Legos, or they're sitting on top of my desk, next to me. But that's me. I'm a bring the kid to work. If I'm working, guess what, guys? We got a assistant today. Anyone need coffee?
Right?
Yeah.
Kate, how about you?
Yeah, I don't have kiddos, but as a leader who has led teams with lots of others who have kiddos, my whole thing is bring them in. How fun is it to have a little visitor for the day and get to experience that and bring some creativity and give them a little something to do? And I think it just uplifts the whole team. I always told my team to, like, babies, puppies, kids, like we're all for it. So bring them on
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, I love an
Anything
office
to
dog.
switch. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had an influx of office dogs lately at our
I
work
love
too.
it.
It seems like everyone's getting a puppy these days. And Jessica, you're like the last one, the most recent person that I know that have went down the
Yeah,
puppy trail.
that little Sammy, he's up to all kind of stuff.
Well, guys, I am really excited. We have a guest, like I mentioned. Kate Ferrian is here today, and she is a really remarkable person. She's one of these people. Like, have you guys ever had this happen before, where you've met a person and they introduce you through your networking to somebody who, like, I think you guys would get along really well.
Mhm.
That's
Yes.
Yes.
that is how Kate and I met, and we literally had, what did we have, Kate? A coffee date.
Yeah.
Over like a Zoom coffee date, just like we like speed dated each other a little bit.
I love it.
But we ended up talking for probably an hour and realized, like, yeah, this is like, you've got a really amazing personality and you have a lot to share. Kate, I would love for you to share a little bit about, just a little bit about your like corporate background and where you're at right now, just to give our listeners a little bit of a history on where you came from.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so grateful to be on the podcast today with you guys. Such a fun group of women. And yeah, we connected so quickly. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm all in. I totally want to have this conversation.
Yay.
So my background is in corporate operations. I've lived in the Twin Cities my whole entire life and started my career at a staffing company and kind of bounced my way through 3 different staffing companies where ultimately I helped build the infrastructure and the scalability for these companies to really grow. Through that experience, I led a lot of teams, and it was such a fantastic experience for me. I love mentoring and coaching and giving women, especially the teams that I led were a lot of women. And so building them on trust and empathy was a big part of what I did in my career. And I actually just left my corporate job, last one as a VP of operations in July, to launch my own business, which I think we'll get into a little bit here, but it's all around
Yay.
empowering and supporting women.
That's awesome. How you took the jump from corporate America to owning your own business?
Oh my gosh. Can't wait.
Right. Corlin's like,
Can't wait.
well, and this is, I think a lot of our listeners are in like just in this same boat because they're women that, you know, in these corporate jobs and they work so hard. And you get to this point where you're like, well, damn, if I'm going to work this hard, I should do this for my family instead of the whoever family. So I'm curious to know, how long did you know that you wanted to do your own thing before you just did it?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, it was about it was about not even quite a year, probably 7 months. I grew up in a really entrepreneurial family, so I had actually had a business when I was much younger, as a catering thing. So it was a little bit in my blood. But still, the security of a corporate job really keeps you handcuffed there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was about a year, I would say like 8 months is when it kind of started. And then about a year later is when I ultimately took the plunge to jump into my own business. But there are so many women who I think, like you said, are in that position of climbing the corporate ladder. You're getting paid pretty well. There's a comfort level. And it's a big risk to be able to go out on your own. And even for me, I was like, I helped build the infrastructures of these companies. If I'm going to start a business, this should be an easy enough thing I know how to do.
Right.
But it still is very scary. And ultimately, it's finding the alignment and the passion that you have in order to take those next steps, and really building the trust within yourself, I think is the journey that helps you kind of take those steps to move out of that corporate role.
Nice.
So Kate, did a lot of it come from you knowing you could do it, or did some of it come from your peers or maybe friends or family or your tribe telling you, hey, you've got this skill, you should do this on your own? Like, how did that come about? How did you get the motivation?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. Through my own personal journey is a lot of where it was coming from as well. And I think we'll jump into that. But ultimately, my life coach was actually the one who said, why don't you just dip your toe in? Why don't you host an event at your house? Let's invite some women and let's just see where it goes. And it was really incredible. I had about 20 women show up to my house, most of which I knew, some of them I didn't. And I wasn't even quite sure how I was going to shape this business. I knew I had this big idea of a dream down the road, but in order to take the steps to get there, I really had to put some infrastructure in place. And coming out of that event and hearing the support of those 20 women say, this is amazing, you can do it, I would love a community like this, really gave me that launching pad to keep taking the steps to move it forward.
I think one of the notable things that we had from our conversation, Kate, is that your relationship history has little ups and downs. And I think that has really shaped your confidence and where you are today. Can you walk us through some of your journey that has brought you relationally to where you're at right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the personal side of things, I mean, having a corporate job, I always considered myself this kind of, badass, independent, strong woman, right? Like climbing the corporate ladder and all of that. But on the personal side, I was married, and I was married for almost 10 years. And, you get married not thinking you're going to get divorced. And all of a sudden come, 9.5 years later, I was sitting in a place of having somebody say, I want a divorce. And so ultimately it was the right decision for us. And as I looked back and went through it, yeah, no, I'm not happy. And we took those steps because it was so easy and I was kind of ready to move on very quickly. I jumped into another relationship, and that relationship started as emotionally and verbally abusive, and about a year in became physically abusive. And when I say physically abusive, the physical abuse had started well before that in terms of punching walls and throwing things and things like that. But one night I ended up with bruises, and it was a turning point for me. I still stayed in that relationship a year later. And I can remember the next morning, I had my girlfriends had met me at my parents' house that night that it happened. And it was scary, right? They're there, they're supporting. The next morning I was at my therapist, and even just getting through that session, I knew that I was going to walk back in the door into that relationship later that day. And ultimately, that is probably the bigger reason why I started my business in empowering women, was because of those relationship dynamics. And it sent me on this journey of really peeling back the layers and trying to understand myself at a level of, how did I get myself in this situation? And so that was a very big dynamic between both the career structure and then these relationships that have brought me on this journey to really peel back the layers and understand who I am, where I came from, and what I could control in all of that situation in order to work my way out of it.
Wow. Yeah, I love that, Kate. And I'm curious and first of all, just thank you for being vulnerable and being brave to share that, because I always wonder, and I too have been through an abusive relationship, and I share and I share, but for a long time, I hear you say stuff like, I had my girlfriends and I had a tribe. I would initially never share such a thing. I was so embarrassed because it wasn't just an abusive relationship. It was a relationship with someone who suffered from mental illness. It was a relationship with someone who was a heroin addict. There was so much there. And I was supposed to be, this strong, independent career, all that. And I didn't have any of that. So when I hear you say you divorced and you jumped into another relationship, that's also something that I did. And so I wonder, did you identify that as being somewhere where you went wrong? Is because if I look at my history, and I'm on my third marriage and thankfully happily married for many years. Now I look back and say, that's one area. It was one relationship after another, after another, after another. I never even had a chance to even figure out who I was as an adult, going from a teen mom to a teen wife. So anything on that front?
Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't take the time to heal from my divorce, right? And the work that I've been doing over the last several years has allowed me to look back on all of those relationships, and even prior to being married, and what the relationships I had with men were, and after that as well. And I was never alone in my life. In peeling back those layers, what it really comes down to is how I saw relationship dynamics. And this didn't just start with all of a sudden jumping into an abusive relationship, It started with my role in my marriage. I was actually the verbally and emotionally abusive person.
Wow.
Because that's what I saw the dynamic of a relationship. I grew up with two parents who have been married for 50 some years together from the time they were 16 years old. But the dynamic that I saw was that as a wife, you're strong, you're independent, and you're verbal, and you tell them what to do, and you control, and you belittle and berate, and that's what you do. And so the reason I like to say that, my ex-husband was the one who asked for the divorce is because I had to, through the healing process, really take the accountability of my own behavior in that relationship.
Yeah.
And it's hard. There's a lot of shame that comes with that. And I had talked to my therapist at one point. I said, I want to go back and apologize to him. And she said, well, there are two people in every relationship, but we all have to own our part. And it's the healthy shame is what we can accept in ourselves in order to heal and move on. And so that has been a big piece of looking back. I do a signature talk in speaking engagements, and I talk about the fact that I don't regret any of it. I can't regret it because where I'm at right now, if any of those pieces wouldn't have fallen into place, I wouldn't have the incredible life that I have right now. So do I have remorse for my actions in certain situations? Absolutely. But I'm a true believer that the experiences and the lessons that we need to learn are going to come our way, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Are there stats around, I feel like it's not as uncommon as we think. Do you have it? I feel like there's this thing that people suffer in secrecy because they're embarrassed, and we know that those come along with. And anytime I'm in a room full of women, I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if there's anybody else here that have been through this like I have, and they'll live their whole lives and die and never share it with anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have the exact stats. I have heard some around domestic violence, and especially sexual violence too. And it's a lot. It's a lot of women. I mean, we're looking at, I was talking to one gal, and I'm not going to quote this exactly, but it was one out of every 3 women have experienced it. And so
I believe it.
And I think there's the whole idea. I mean, I think there's a lot of women who get into their initial relationships that are abusive, but there's also a big amount of women who jump into a second relationship, and that's actually the relationship that is abusive. Because I don't think we're doing a lot of healing, and a lot of, we're jumping from one relationship to the next versus taking that time. But again, it goes back to what we've known and what we've seen a lot.
I think that there's just a huge stigma, like Jessica, you were saying. I also was in a very controlling relationship in my early 20s, and this is kind of where we bonded, Kate, when we were talking. That I just had thought, oh my gosh, that's a part of your story, is a little bit a part of my story too, where I just had thought. And when I was in it, I did not know how this happened, because in every other facet of my life, I was strong and made good choices and was outgoing. And for whatever reason, that this man had this control over me, this boy.
Corlin, I'm curious why you use the word controlling instead of abusive. Just curious, not judging. I'm just curious.
In my scenario, it wasn't physical, but it was very mentally controlling. And I felt like in my relationship, the person that I was dating at the time wanted to control where I went, what I said, what I wore at some point. And it was just I woke up one day and I just had thought, oh my goodness, the person that I see in the mirror is not me. And I don't know how I got here. And two, I don't know what to do to get out.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. It's very hard to get out of the situation
once you're there. Yeah. But I like that, Kate, you made reference to abuse. And when I hear that, Corlin, and this isn't for me to name what you went through, but I still view it as abuse. Like I didn't
Yeah,
even know,
for
like I
sure.
just say, well, he never put his hands on me until he did. And it started with the controlling, telling me what to do, and then the punching holes in the wall. It's all abuse. And so for me, I thought that, and then Jamie was leading me to that next thing is that you wake up one day and you're like, how the hell, like me, big bad me? Like, how did I get here? And then once you're there, how do you get out? It's always like I got to a point where I literally feel I feared for my life. I thought if I would say I wanted out, that this is someone that would have killed me in my sleep. And that was my fear of how am I going to get out of this?
Mhm. Yeah, it is. And it is all abuse, but it's a journey to get there, I think. And be able to say that out loud. Because for the longest time I didn't call it abuse. Because yeah, up until a point he hadn't hit me, it was verbal, it was emotional. And again, because that's a lot of what I saw in the environment that I grew up in, to have to admit to myself that that is abuse is really saying this is the environment that I grew up in too. It's a journey, and it is a tough one. And I think that's why we don't talk about it as much as it should be talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you now have come full circle from this. You have your own website, your own consulting company. Tell us a little bit about Simply Become It, what that site does, what you do through this, and what your goal is to empower other women.
Yeah, absolutely. So through that experience, I knew that my support system was one of the biggest things that got me through. And the girlfriends that I had, they were there to hold my hand, to cry with me, things like that. But where I really needed to lean into were the experts, the therapists, the coaches, the other practitioners that were going to help me really dive into some of these other areas so that I understood where some of this behavior was coming from, where the feelings were coming from. And so ultimately through that journey, I had built kind of an advisory board of coaches and therapists and wellness practitioners to help me at different stages. And I saw such value in that. And I did along the way also go to a couple different places that were like kind of wellness retreat centers that were really helpful in my healing journey. And so I knew that there was something to giving women a support system around them if they didn't have it for themselves, and being able to make sure that we had like tried and true tested women who wanted to educate and be empathetic and non-judgmental. And there's no criticism in this journey, because women just need to be able to come to somebody and lay themselves out and feel really safe, especially because they haven't been in an environment that was safe before. So through my whole experience, I started getting this inkling that I was like, gosh, I just want to support and empower other women. Like, it took me being torn down to absolutely nothing. I mean, at that point, at that night, and leading up to it I was nothing, right? Like, I was torn down to this shell of a person that didn't even know who she was or how she was going to move forward. My goal in creating Simply Become It was so that other women don't have to get to that point. And if they do, it's not my journey to change. It's not my time to change anybody's journey. We all have to experience different things for ourselves. But if somebody is torn down to that point, that they know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and a support system to be able to help them through that. So taking my skill set from my corporate of building infrastructures and foundations and coaching and mentoring, and then using these wellness practitioners, I came up with this 90-day journey that I take women on. And it's really structured because my goal for women is that we spend 5 to 10 minutes on ourselves every single day. I think as women, we tend to put ourselves last. We put significant others first, the kids first, our careers first, and we forget about ourselves. And so this journey is really a journey of awareness, but also a journey of accountability. So we spend 90 days together, and we do this in a group setting as well, so that women have the support of other women who are going through this same journey, regardless of whether they have the same issues or things going on in their lives. So the first part that we do is it's all around building confidence. I think that was the first thing. I mean, I always felt like this confident person up until that point. And my confidence just was shot. And I think it's important to start with confidence and some work on that, because you are so down in the dumps. So if we can pick women up and say, hey, look at, you've got these amazing emotional and mental and energetic strengths just innately in you. I think we can build each other up, and you can start to see like, yeah, I have done that in my career, or yeah, I have done that in my other relationships because I'm empathetic and I'm resilient and I'm courageous, or whatever those strengths are that you might have. And then we go into 5 days of practices that keep ingraining that. So why am I proud of my strengths? How do I use my strengths? All of those types of questions that keep us in that space of positivity and reflection. And then we go into a 2-week period where we look at where women are at in every aspect of life. And then we tie in our values and making sure that our value system is aligned with each of those areas. And then lastly, we tackle the limiting beliefs that are really holding us back. And so what kind of mechanisms have we put in place in order to cope in the environments that we've been in our whole entire lives, and what are the things that have shaped us to get to where we're at? So we look at limiting beliefs. From there, we set a little bit of visioning for 30 days on like, what do I want to look and feel like in one of these areas of my life that I'm struggling with? And then the wellness team that I'm building really comes in, and it's a group of coaches that then you go into the coaching program for 30 days so that we can specifically work on either, relationships or health or career or any of those major areas in our life that we're wanting to focus on.
Wow.
And so it's really structured and ultimately gives women a big support system of both other women who are going through it together, but also wellness practitioners that can continue to help them on that journey.
I love it. That's great.
Community. I mean,
right?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I want to put something in the suggestion box that you graduate from the program in Hawaii on a 7-day trip.
Done.
There's this fun girls trip at the end of this, Hawaii or someplace like that, just for a few days to kind of.
Absolutely.
And how many, like, would you say that, because I keep going back to what Jamie said, which is like, how do I get out of this? Are the women in your program women that are out of it, or are some of them still in the middle of it? Are you like, or
what is it? What
right?
What is it?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. So the two kind of focus groups that I focus on are career-driven, ambitious women who have been climbing that corporate ladder and are getting to a point where they're going, what am I doing? What's next for me? Am I going to keep climbing and doing this work, like you said at the beginning, for somebody else? Or am I going to take kind of a turn out of corporate and figure out what my passion is, what ignites me, what brings me joy every day? And so, but there's a feeling of stuckness in there. Mm-hmm. And so this journey is perfect for figuring out that stuckness because it's aligning. I always like to put it in 3 buckets. Is one, who doesn't love to use their innate strengths that they have? Like, we all feel good when we're doing something that we're really good at. The second thing is our core values. What values do we hold in life? And if we're following our values, typically we're going to feel pretty aligned and good in that aspect as well. And then the third thing is what ignites us? What are we like so passionate about talking about? And that we could talk about it all day, every day, or do that activity. And I think there's magic when you can bring all 3 of those together. And so that's where finding that alignment and working with women who are ambitious, but kind of looking for more.
Okay.
And then I think there's the group of women who we've gone through a big transition in our life. We've either, a divorce, we're in or finally ready to take the steps to come out of that abusive relationship. Also job loss, right? Like we've maybe been, our company downsized or we were let go, and that's a big transition point. Another one is empty nesters. I think, once the kids are gone and figuring out where to go from there. So transition points are another good spot. So I think there are probably, there are women who are still in that place of just feeling stuck, or ready to come out of it. But I like to say too, this is a journey that you do have to be ready for. And my goal with doing it is not to bring women through it who aren't quite ready for that. I have other resources, right? That's what's so important to me about building this team of wellness practitioners is they might not be ready for the 90-day journey and to fully commit to that. But I have resources with therapists and somatic therapists and coaches that might be a better starting point for them so that they're not diving so deep right away while they're still really, really in it. And that was my experience. I had to take it one step at a time. I couldn't focus on everything. I had to, really, it was the strength training for me that ultimately started building back my confidence and gave me just that little push towards, you know what, I think I can take this step of potentially leaving.
Yeah. No, I like, and just for our listeners, because what I'm hearing you say, and I love this, Kate, is that it sounds like you haven't limited yourself to people based on your why behind why you started this. So what I heard you say is there are some women that are just in this place of stuckness. And I love that word. And I'm doing this and I don't know. And it's like, I'm ready for something new. And I think that's probably, a lot of people and probably resonates with some of our listeners. And then there's those people like myself who have over the years been through a lot of trauma. And the moment that I think that I have gone past it, been through therapy, even in a recent experience with my husband and working with some prayer partners, they're like, there's some unresolved issues here, sister. Like, do you got some trauma? We got to get to the root of that. And I'm like, oh, this again? I thought we were done with this. I mean, we're literally talking about 20 years later and this thing is coming back. So I really love this. I encourage people to pay attention to the signs that you may think you've worked through some things, but if, identify when you have some things going on. And for me, it's some reactions that I've had recently with my husband where it's like, wait a minute, I'm seeing a theme here. There are some unresolved issues. And as I've been praying about, Lord, what is the root of this? He showed me that it's going back to this relationship that I thought I was done with. And I may need to circle back around and set up a consultation with you, Kate. So yeah.
I hate to make it sound like but it is. Even for me starting this business, I'm like, wait, I thought I healed through that issue. And now it's like I talk a lot about there's these layers and every layer you do have to go deeper and deeper. And the deeper you go, the more joy you get to feel, but also the harder side of it comes with that. And so you could be in this amazing relationship and this amazing friendship and this amazing career, and there's still going to be some triggers there that bring you back to something a little bit deeper that you still need to kind of keep working through. And that's why it's hard. And that's why I always say, I call this the journey of awareness because I'm trying to bubble all this stuff up to the top right away so that we have something to actually work with. And we know my personal trainer and Morgan, she's amazing. She was the first person on my journey. We like to joke around. We're like, we talk in our trauma responses. So she'll call me out and be like, well, that's your perfectionism coming out because of X, Y, and Z. And I'll be like, well, yeah, but that's your overachiever. That's, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's what I want women to get to is let's start being real and talking about those are the things that are holding us back. Yeah. And when we can kind of joke about it and be aware enough about it, we can catch ourselves in those moments and go, no, perfectionism, you're going to take a back seat right now because I've got things to do and places to go.
Yeah.
But it's that awareness that you have to come to first.
Love it.
I love that. I definitely, I love the fact that you brought up doing 5 to 10 minutes every day because you're absolutely right. It's like we always kind of put ourselves last. And I think, asking someone to spend 2 hours a day on themselves or something like that, it's like, oh, it kind of takes away the guilt, that guilt right off the bat of hey, it's 10 minutes, it's 5 minutes, it's 10 minutes, I think that's amazing. But also just as you were talking through the plan and what you do for women, the thought in my head was just, it's never too late, because I think, myself, the empty nester, you brought up the empty nester. I mean, I still have a child at home, but when my 2 older daughters left for college, they both left at the same time. I went to see a counselor because I was like, who am I if I'm not a mom?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. I mean, I really, really struggled with that. And, sometimes you go, well, is it too late for me to actually work on this? And I think like it really is never too late, right?
And then you
to
went and
start
got
working
another
yourself.
man, Jamie. So there you go.
It's never too late. I got
This
the
is
best one.
not-
I have the best one. Save the best for last.
and I think as you're talking, I feel like one of the challenges is just like when you're feeling that wondering that you might be feeling unsettled or stuck. I think a lot of people would maybe resonate with this is that I feel like first step is probably the hardest in just saying that one, I need help, or two, that there's an issue because we've just worked on so hard. Like I put everything in a row exactly how I wanted it to go. And now I'm looking at it like, crap, this is actually not the row I wanted to build.
Right. Yeah.
But so is there any advice that you have, Kate, in terms of like, just, I don't know, how do you announce the wake up call, even if it's just to yourself and just a little quiet voice, or like, what does that first step look like for a lot of people that are leaders, women, strong, people just
Stop.
Honestly, it's asking for help. And I know it's so hard, but I know I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't leaned into asking for help. And it is not something I do easily. I mean, even to this point, I've been dating and like, no, I'm strong and independent. I don't need you to introduce me to people, and I don't need you to do this. I'm going to do it all on my own, but when we are in that place of stuck, like, I wish I could say like what that trigger point is, but my advice would be like the minute that you're questioning, like, gosh, I think there's something more, or you say the word of, I'm not sure where to go, or I'm not sure what to do. But if you're thinking that, like, that should be your point of like, I just need to reach out to somebody for help.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be anybody. It could be a girlfriend. It could be a practitioner. It could be anybody. But by doing it one time it just puts something in action, and somebody might go, hey, well, I've got a life coach, or I've got a therapist, or I've got whatever. But finding that place to ask for help, I think I know it's a big step, but it's probably the most important one.
Yeah, that is help is hard sometimes. I find being super transparent for sure.
Yeah.
One thing that I gathered on your website too is that you are really big on personal affirmations. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for the everyday person and how that impacts people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's perfect because I'll show you my little notebook here. I had to write these next to me, and one of the very first practices that we do is called an I am statement. And it's for women to be able to I give them their strengths off of some assessments and the tools that we use. And then they build a statement that basically says, this is who I am. This is why I'm proud of myself. This is how I've used these strengths. But I'm a big proponent of words have so much strength in them. And I found myself, this was a couple weeks ago, and even in my own business I still have some really deep-seated fears. And so I wrote to myself, I said, you are worthy. I said, I am worthy. I am enough. I am so grateful. And then I go on with some of those things. But the reason it's so meaningful to me is when I was leaving that relationship, I actually I scheduled a retreat the weekend that he was moving out of my house. And I remember going to this retreat, and I went to a meditation class where we were talking about mantras, and we all started meditating. And she said, you're going to hear this. It's going to be soft. It's going to be really quiet, but this voice is going to speak to you. And it's not the voice in our head that's loud, that's telling us that we're not good and that we need to do more and that we, all those things. It's this really quiet voice. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden I could feel the tears rolling down my face. And I heard this voice say, I am enough. And it was so powerful to kick off that retreat and to really have it tell me that. And so we do a lot of work around really getting into your intuition and listening to that inner voice, and then talking to ourselves in a really positive way.
Yeah. I love that you made reference to, and not this voice, because one of the things that I did, and I just figured out a lot of this just myself through prayer and meditation. And I came to the realization that a lot of my issues of allowing myself to be in this relationship was because of the lack of confidence and self-worth. And that throughout my life, the voices I had in my head were those things. You're not good enough. You're never going to be anything. You had a kid at this age. No one's ever going to love you or your kid, all those things. So what I did was I wrote down like what I called lie that I could ever hear, every voice that I ever heard of negative things on the right side of the paper and then on the left side of the paper. And so for me, it was like, you gotta shut these lies down. And the only way to shut the lie down is to replace it with truth. And even though I didn't think that was truth, I had to make it my truth. So on the other side of the paper, I had to write all of these things down that were truth to replace the lies. And then those are the things that I started telling myself. And when you talk about fake it till you make it, at some point I realized that I spoke those things into existence over myself. And that is how I was able to build confidence. I would have much rather do it through a therapist, but I did not have the money for it at the time. So that's just what I did.
Yeah. That's an amazing, amazing exercise to do, because it is like that quiet voice. It's a lot of subconscious work. And so by doing that and speaking that out loud and saying those truths and it hits on all of the points of continuing to speak positively to ourselves until we actually believe it.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age where this imposter syndrome is something that people feel and is truth. That is a fantastic exercise to do anytime that you feel that kind of doubt, right?
Yeah. Because it creeps up on you. It does.
Kate, this has been an amazing conversation. I absolutely love all of your insight and your input into this. So for our listeners, how can they find you? I know that a lot of our listeners resonate with this message, with a lot of the same things. Where can they find you if they need you?
Yeah, because I'm going to Minneapolis and we're having wine, just so you know.
My gosh, totally.
Wait till the polar bleach.
Yeah, come in the spring. But that's exactly what I'm trying to do, right? Like my goal is that these women come into this group and they're like, I'm sitting around with my girlfriends and we're talking about all this fun and hard stuff, but we're doing it together and just having a really good time. It's just like this conversation.
Yep.
We just have to talk and support each other. So they can find me. I have a website at simplybecomeit.com. I'm also on Instagram at simplybecomeit and LinkedIn under Kate Ferrian. So those are kind of the three main places. And I always love to give a shout out to my social media gal because she is incredible. I would not be near as far in my business or helping support other women without her. So
that's awesome. Well, great.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Absolutely. Well, again, we are Lead Like a Girl, and you can find us on all of our social media handles, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. As I was sitting here, I got a bleep. We have another YouTube follower, so that's really nice if you heard that. And we also just launched a new website, so we've got lots of great merchandise out there. So leadlikeagirllab.com is where you can find us. But thank you for subscribing to our podcast and help us grow our listenership. If you find any of this information helpful and it resonates with you, please share that. Let's continue to champion other women like Kate has through her business and through her mentorship and through all of her wisdom. Again, we're at leadlikeagirllab.com and we'll see you next week.